Hello, everybody. I'm really excited to be talking to David Pakman today. David Pakman, of course, is from The David Pakman Show. He's got a great channel on YouTube. He's also a nationally syndicated radio host as well. And I believe, are you still on Free Speech TV as well, David?
We are indeed, yeah. 11 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday.
So he's everywhere. He's been doing this for a while. Very successful YouTuber and host. So David and I are talking today because we both stumbled across an article that this really caught my eye, and if I'm being completely honest with people, it got me pretty angry because basically this Vice article was essentially a snub of progressive, liberal YouTube hosts and new media hosts. So I'll just give everybody the title, David, and then we'll start talking about this, but the title of the article was "Why the Right Dominates YouTube." There's a lot to discuss in just that. So what are your initial thoughts?
I was interested in the article just because anytime that I see a headline, I assume like, oh, this is going to be interesting. There's going to be data. There will be facts. There will be comparisons of channels. And I was curious, oh, well, how do you define what is the right on YouTube and what's the left?
Right.
None of that stuff was in the article. And the article basically has a screenshot of Paul Joseph Watson, who I'm sure a lot of our viewers know is associated with Alex Jones and InfoWars. And it mentions PewDiePie at one point. I have no idea how PewDiePie fits into an analysis of whether the left or right dominates YouTube.
Yeah.
But it didn't really say anything with facts, and that's what first caught my eye.
Yeah. So on title alone, I was furious, but then when I read the article, I was even more furious because, like you say, by the time they get to PewDiePie in the article, I'm like, okay, what is going on here? Because what the author was trying to do, and by the way, the author's name is Tom Wyman, but he was like trying to lump PewDiePie into the right-wing box because of the recent Wall Street Journal piece on PewDiePie, which was, he had made some controversial jokes, but as a result of that, they're like, people are just defining him as a political YouTuber and somebody who's like forthright about that stuff, when, as far as I know, I don't watch PewDiePie at all, really, but people in my audience might know. I think he's just like a gamer, right? And every now and then he might make a comment here and there, but his politics are fairly indecipherable. I don't know if anybody could really say for sure he's a right-winger, but in the article, they just kind of lump him into that category, which shows you we're dealing with somebody who basically is just kind of giving their opinion, and they don't know whether they're coming or going.
Yeah, it sort of seems like the author feels that the right is dominating on YouTube, but beyond that, I don't know. And I agree. My familiarity with PewDiePie is limited to probably 3 to 5 articles I've read about him, and one video I looked at. Whatever the guy's politics are, it's clear it's not a political channel, and I think
Right.
that's why it doesn't really fit into this article at all.
Yeah, so I want to give one of the quotes here from the article. It says, quote, "On YouTube, left-wing voices are seemingly non-existent."
Right, seemingly to who?
Yeah, and it's like, when I read that, I could feel the slap across my face. I could feel the slap across your face. I could feel the slap across TYT's face. So yeah, and actually, you know what? I actually have some numbers here that I want to share with you because this really gets into the crux of it, which is the article that could have been written or perhaps should have been written if somebody were to talk about this in a serious way. Let's do some comparisons. TYT. Now, love them, hate them, whatever. There's a lot of people with various opinions in our audiences about that. But they have 3.4 billion views on their main channel alone. The closest, competitor to them, and they would probably take issue with even having this person in the same category, but you could say, a right-wing version is Alex Jones. And Alex Jones, it's like he's a weird mix of right-wing beliefs. He says he's libertarian, but to me, when I watch him, all I see is just mostly conspiracy stuff. But he has 1.2 billion views, so he's significantly behind TYT. My channel has 303 million views. Paul Joseph Watkins, Prison Planet, he has 182 million views.
Watson. We want to
When I say Watkins, did I say Watkins?
Yeah.
Okay. So
I don't want the trolls raining down on you.
No matter what, they're going to come after us for this, but it's okay. We're used to it. Thick skin. and you have 221 million views. You're crushing Steven Crowder, who has 138 million. You're crushing Stefan Molyneux, who has 157 million. So I don't, almost by any metric, if you're going by the most objective metric, which I would argue is total views, not only are we not non-existent, we're winning.
Yeah, and there's a couple other things here. And the thing is, this is an article that lacks data, and we're now talking about data, so it's sort of going to start to get a little bit into the logistics of how YouTube works and stuff that may be of interest or may not. But there's a couple different ways you could sort of evaluate what's being said here. And I don't know if you get messages like this from people on social media, but I'll get messages from people who say, dude, even though you're trying hard, X YouTuber is crushing you. And sometimes I'll ignore it. And sometimes out of curiosity, I'll pull up, not that this is the best tool, but there's a tool called Social Blade that you can look at. And it'll sort of give you current subscriber and view data, as well as projections based on recent numbers and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And you'll see these big subscriber numbers, 600,000, 700,000, but you don't really get traffic from subscribers unless the subscribers are watching your videos. You also don't make any money from subscribers unless people are actually watching your videos. And like you pointed out, if you look at, and this is not a penis size contest, right? It's just sort of saying,
I say it is for me, but not for you.
Oh, well, okay, fair enough. For you it is. That may be fine. But the point is, when you look at the views that these channels get, very often I'll see that these are relatively small channels, and it's not about arguing with people on social media, but it's about, let's establish what we mean when we say that there is an audience or there is not an audience. There are many ways that you can get people to click the subscribe button on YouTube, but that's not an audience.
Yeah, and even granting all those people those points, the main thesis of the article is still factually incorrect. So if somebody were to say, you know what, I don't care that you think, Kyle, that overall views is the best way to measure it. I think that subscribers is the best way to measure it. Okay, well then if you go by that metric, sure, Steven Crowder has me, Steven Crowder has you, Prison Planet has us, and that's a different metric you could use where you say, you know what, they're beating you. But remember, the point of the title of the article is why the right dominates YouTube. I can tell you one thing for sure, we ain't getting dominated. And second of all, again, a quote from the article, on YouTube, left-wing voices are seemingly non-existent. That's just totally not true. And also, let's remember, again, the Young Turks, regardless of what people think of them, they're by far and away number one in left media, right media, all political media, especially when you talk about YouTube. So I don't know what this guy was smoking, but I want some because it sounds like quite a trip that he was on.
There's also a fundamental difficulty with even doing something like this, because at what point does a YouTube channel that's associated with a broader brand no longer count as a YouTuber, and now they're part of corporate media? I don't know where the line is.
Right.
At what point are you under the umbrella of being left or right? If you're an authoritarian leftist versus a libertarian leftist or a libertarian rightist, which umbrella are you under? I don't even know that I understand how we would be able to agree on the terms required to make this data-driven.
Yeah, and he said something in the article about why he thinks the right is, in his mind, crushing on YouTube. And he basically says, like, well, they're inherently authoritarian, and so one person talking is like, they're driven to that, and they like that. And it's like, well, okay, again, hold on. That doesn't really make much sense, because, like I said, by some measures, we're actually winning. So is your thesis now that the left is more inherently authoritarian? Like, it doesn't seem like there's any real standard that he's using. It really is just all in his mind. And furthermore, yeah, like you made a good point there about the authoritarian left. And I would argue that to the extent that the right is doing well on YouTube, or people who can be viewed as the right but maybe aren't necessarily right, it would be because there's a lot of coverage now and focus on the authoritarian left, or social justice warriors as they're called. And that generates a lot of views and a lot of clicks. I mean, you cover social justice warriors, I cover social justice warriors. It's not like, we shy away when there's somebody on the left who's shutting down a speaker on a college campus. I pretty routinely, in fact, I would argue maybe 100% of the time, have sided with the speaker, even if I think the speaker is odious. So I think that, again, there's a category problem, like you alluded to, where in the mind of the person who wrote this article, they might lump in The Amazing Atheist as somebody who's a right-winger on YouTube. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And by the way, what you just mentioned made me think of this Tommy Lauren story. Lauren, I never know how to say her name, as far as shutting down and encouraging speech, maybe a topic for another moment. But the moment, and by the way, I don't know the author of this article, and I'm going to assume that he's just an awesome guy and very genuinely nice person and had all the best intentions, just to get that on the record, whether or not the article suggests that I'm right in saying that. The moment in the article where I thought it could have gone in an interesting direction was the moment you just talked about, which is starting to think about why certain platforms or venues lend themselves to better replication of either left or right wing ideas. It could have gotten pretty interesting at that point. And I've talked about this a lot. What is it about commercial talk radio with a 37-minute hour and 23 minutes of commercials that lends itself to the right wing idea on taxes versus the left wing idea on taxes? And it's pretty clear. Left wing idea is, hey, tax relief. Taxes are a burden. You lift the burden, and now you are relieved. The left-wing position has no opposite to that, because it's not, hey, more taxes the better. It's, well, we need to consider the role of government and providing some blah, 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 blah. Yeah. So there's a really good conversation to be had there about how the new forms of media, like YouTube and Twitter, for example, lend themselves better to left or right-wing ideas. Article didn't go there, though.
Yeah, and that's a very difficult thing to do, to parse through all the data on those different mediums. So, like, when it comes to Twitter, I probably would have said 2 or 3 years ago, like, oh yeah, the left dominates Twitter, as this guy argues in his piece, like, oh, the left is dominating Twitter. Today, I wouldn't necessarily say that, and I haven't seen any hard data on that. So I'd actually be hesitant to even say that the left dominates Twitter. The default, my kind of default based on no data, but just a gut feeling when I look at Twitter now is like, it seems about 50-50 to me. And to the extent that maybe the left does dominate it, I would argue maybe that has more to do with demographic reasons, that younger people tend to use Twitter, and, statistically younger people tend to lean more left. But yeah, you make an interesting point about talk radio there too, that it was dominated, especially like in the 1990s when it was Rush Limbaugh and all that, it was dominated by right-wing talkers. And I'm curious how much of that is, first of all, just the fact that it was apparently conservatives who were just more likely to listen to AM radio, but also I wonder how much, and maybe Mike Malloy would have something to say about this, Tom Hartman would have something to say about this, I wonder how much corporations kind of silenced on purpose left-wing voices.
It's not so much. So it's interesting you're mentioning this. I've got a new project that I'm going to be talking about soon, and I've been reading more academic writing about this issue. And there's this book, Waves of Rancor, which is an academic look at media ownership, right-wing media, hate groups, etc. There's a systemic bias, an ownership bias that exists. If you think about the 90s, and especially mid to late 90s, which could be argued to be sort of like the golden era of right-wing talk radio and significant growth of talk radio. If you think about what it costs to run a traditional radio station, which you and I don't really have to think about because media has changed so much. If you think about it, the amount of money that's required to run it, the sort of regulatory issues that you may have to deal with if you own a radio station, depending on who's at the FCC, by its very nature, it's going to lend itself to right-wing ownership. And you may have right-wing ownership that says, as a product, I want a liberal message, right, editorially. But by and large, if you look at the situation that lends itself to the ownership structure, you understand perfectly why talk radio has been dominated by the right for so long.
Yeah. So now we're touching on corporate media in general, and in a way that that's similar to Noam Chomsky's manufacturing consent idea, which was, you get a picture painted of the world that is basically right in alignment with the picture the powerful want you to see, because the powerful people with money own the airwaves and make up these big corporations, and they're only going to hire people who are going to paint that picture of the world for you. Now, it's not like nefarious where, there's censorship and I'll beat you over the head with this if you disagree with it, but there's a reason why it's like a system of filters where at the end of the day on a CNN, for example, you're going to have somebody like Don Lemon, you're going to have somebody like Wolf Blitzer who doesn't rock the boat very much, doesn't question the underlying things in our society which make it function as it functions. So they're more willing to just kind of give the vacuous, this is what the Democrats say, this is what the Republicans say, I'll let you guys decide, I'm not going to rock the boat too much. And Chomsky at least argues you actually get a picture of the world that's painted that's even more what the powerful want you to see than even in some cases when there's actual state-run media, So, and obviously that's not the case with every state, because states vary and states are different. It's not like, U.S. media is as subservient to power as, say, North Korea. But at the same time, there is a point to be made there that maybe something like the BBC, for example, might have more independence and give you more varying viewpoints than a CNN would. And CNN's picture that they paint of the world is much more in alignment with what the U.S. government wants you to see than even BBC's is with the British government.
And this sort of relates also to the categorization problem we talked about earlier with the article that is the original catalyst for this conversation, which is if you look on YouTube under news and politics, some of the best performing channels would be the YouTube channel, the YouTube arm of establishment corporate media. Does that count as right-wingers dominating YouTube, or is it really something else? Is it an established brand with hundreds of millions of dollars behind it who has chosen to use YouTube as a tool? Like Fox News' YouTube channel, whatever that contributes to the total views or subscribers of YouTube news and politics views, should that really be included if you're doing an analysis of whether YouTube is dominated by the left or the right? Because you're talking about, again, a media outlet with the corporate ownership structure that we're talking about and criticizing. I don't know, and I'm not asking rhetorically. I genuinely don't know whether do Fox News's YouTube numbers count towards the domination of the right wing on YouTube? Probably not.
Yeah, I'd agree with that for a variety of reasons. I mean, I also find it interesting. This is something I've thought about before, and I've even mentioned on air. I feel like YouTube, in many ways, is a real, genuine free marketplace when it comes to news and information. I mean, obviously, and other things too. There are makeup channels, and then it's okay who has the most views. It's a very, I mean, you start with 0 subscribers, and it's like a libertarian's wet dream. Okay, everybody starts here, and then go ahead, just duke it out, and we'll see who gets the most subscribers at the end of the day, and who gets the most views at the end of the day, and who can generate, the biggest audience or whatever. And if you were to take the hosts on Fox, take Brian Kilmeade, for example, just to pick on him, or Steve Doocy, or Wolf Blitzer, or any of these people, and you give them a YouTube channel, start them with 0 subscribers, don't give them the unlimited, millions of dollars of backing, and just let them try to make it on their own on YouTube, I think they would flop miserably. And
but a lot of that has to do with sort of what's valued in a CNN anchor, or what's expected if you're the Fox News person who has to, put a particular set of talking points forward when Bill Salmon, or whoever the Bill Salmon today is that's writing memos to you. The expectation's totally different, and I think the point you're making is it doesn't even translate to what you need to do on YouTube. Yeah,
no, it's a totally different thing. And I also get the sense that with YouTubers, you get a sense that you really like what you're doing, and you're interested in covering the news, and you're fascinated by it. I know I can say the same thing about what I do. Even people who I disagree with, you get that sense when you watch them, and it's just like a totally different beast. It's a totally different animal than like a corporate media. If there were to be corporate media that CNN, for example, I think they get a lot of views on YouTube, but they release like 30 videos a day, 40 videos a day, and each one gets like 400 views or something, but you add it all up over time, and it's like, oh, wow, look at that. So, yeah, it's a totally different animal completely. But, to go back to this article here, I honestly thought it was pretty, like, disrespectful. You're being very nice to the guy, and you were, but yeah. I'm, like, really
I don't know. I mean,
it.
Like, I find it to lack context completely. I mean, it's throwing out a couple of assertions in the absence of not only data, which you provided at the beginning of the segment, but also in a total absence of context. But I don't know why I'm finding it hard to be that upset. It just seems silly. Like, is anyone even reading this article? Like, I feel like most of the reactions to it were to you and me tweeting about it.
Yeah, well, it's funny because people on the right are actually pissed about it too, but they're pissed about it for a different reason. They're pissed about it because they view it just like the PewDiePie thing. They viewed it as like, well, here we go again, like establishment media trying to take down these crusaders on the right who are just more popular and trying to drag them down by saying the only reason they're doing well and they're dominating YouTube is because, right-wing audiences are inherently authoritarian and there's these angry white males in front of cameras that are ranting. And so the right is mad at it for a different reason. I'm simply mad at it on factual grounds, and I feel like it's part of this bigger thing where it seems to me at least that there's a real snubbing of genuine progressives and liberals. Like I was just reading, this is totally unrelated, but it kind of links in here. I was just reading earlier, and I'll be covering this on my show tomorrow. There's this new meeting of like top Democratic Party donors. It's not the new like left-wing version of CPAC that they recently launched. It's like another thing where all the donors are getting together. I think it might be called Democracy Alliance or something like that. And it's like, the Democrats are getting together to try to figure out how to combat Trump. And there's this article, there are all these articles written about it. And like, as I'm looking at that, I'm thinking, yeah, but hold on now. Like as you know, we launched this thing, Justice Democrats. Not you, but I was involved in the co-founding this thing, and like the amount of coverage that got, and definitely the amount of positive coverage, nearly non-existent positive coverage that got, when that actually has like grassroots support and there are numbers behind it. It's like it was just totally snubbed and ignored versus a bunch of billionaires get together who are big money Democratic donors. In fact, they literally say in the article, George Soros is going to be attending this thing. Like, okay, so they name a bunch of billionaires who are getting together to, we're going to figure out how to fight Trump. They get more coverage than literally hundreds of thousands of people who are organizing to fight back against it. And I feel like that this is part of the same kind of thing here, where it's like, well, we're not going to count the liberal YouTubers, the progressive YouTubers. We're not going to count the left YouTubers in the same way that we're not going to count the real left-wingers who are organizing to try to beat back against Trump. It's only legitimate when, it's a bigger, whatever, it's CNN, it's MSNBC, it's what Center for American Progress, like only they count. Like you don't count. Like if you're liberal and you're progressive and you're grassroots, we're just going to dismiss you out of hand.
I don't know how much experience you've had with the sort of I'm trying to think of how to even say it. The media conference circuit. Let me just put it really vaguely, just to try to not identify any specific people or conferences. But I've had many frustrating conversations with organizers of different types of conferences that want to be seen as sort of like the media people doing the innovation and the really great stuff we're having at our conference to speak. Fantastic. Great concept, right? We should be doing that. David, we were wondering if maybe you'd be interested in being on a panel. Now, it's going to be like the 7 a.m. thing on the last day of the conference, which obviously nobody goes to. But you could be like there's currently a moderator and 5 other people on the panel, and maybe you could be the 6th person on the panel to talk about use of online video for getting out alternatives to corporate media narratives. Perfect. Wow, that sounds great. Who's leading the panel? Who else is on the panel? It's this great person who's had huge success in online video. They give me the name. I Google the person. They've got a YouTube channel with 500 subscribers. Okay. And it's not that I'm upset that I'm being snubbed in some way, right? I'll go to a conference if it makes sense. If it doesn't, I won't go. As you probably have figured out, we often get the most mileage from just staying in our studios and
That's
doing
right.
the show as opposed to being all over the place.
100%.
But I say, why aren't we bringing in the people with the demonstrable track record in doing stuff as opposed to somebody that's probably in the same way that you're suggesting, who's known, somebody who's friends with the conference organizer or whatever?
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like that's certainly part of it. But another part of it might be, and it might be the case for this writer too. I don't know, but it might be the case. It might just be sheer ignorance, man. It might just be like, here this guy is, and, in his little bubble with his Twitter account, with his followers, he came across whatever, some Prison Planet videos or some Alex Jones videos, and he saw some numbers, and he's like, oh my God, this is what's happening. The right is dominating YouTube. And, far be it from him to actually research and see what the Young Turks are up to, what David Pakman's up to, what Secular Talk's up to. And there are a lot of great, I just want to give a shout out to these people real fast because I feel like they deserve it. Jimmy Dore's channel is exploding. The Humanist Report is exploding. Benjamin Dixon, who obviously you're very familiar with, exploding. So, I don't know. I think I took it a little bit more to heart than even you did. You're being very, very senatorial about this.
Well, I don't know. I mean, is your sense, like we've talked a lot off air, is your sense that I've become more desensitized to trolling, criticism, and attacks than you have for some reason? I mean, I don't know what that reason would be. I'm genuinely wondering, maybe I've just become desensitized in some way.
I think I just have a shorter fuse in general. And my tolerance for bullshit is nearly non-existent. And when I see something like this, I just I picture myself as the editor, and I'm like this is a fireable offense. What do you want me to say? I mean, look, I wouldn't actually do that. Let me be clear, just so everybody knows. But if you're gonna write for Vice, and Vice, it's, hey, we're a news site and we cover things that are happening, and I mean, they do some great work. They got people on the ground in Syria and getting shot at. So don't get me wrong, they do some great work. But if you have somebody write something like this and it's just factually not true, I mean, I literally asked the guy to take the article down. I tweeted at him. I was like, "Are you going to correct this, or are you going to take it down? Well, you can't just leave this up there. That's just, your title is factually incorrect. Never mind the things in the article that are incorrect." So I don't know. I'm totally averse to it and really mad about it.
Did you hear back from the guy?
No, I didn't hear back from the guy, which is, unfortunately, is coming to be expected, even though, I have way more Twitter followers than him. I don't even know if the guy's verified, but you call somebody out accurately, correctly, and say, look, you got to either put a correction or you got to do something here. Nothing, because there's no accountability, and unfortunately, that's the world we live in. And to bring it full circle to talk about no accountability in media here, let me just, for the record, note that Alex Jones doesn't believe Sandy Hook happened. And this is, so they put up the face of a guy who is part of Alex Jones' network, and they do an article based on him, and that network, or Alex himself, Paul Joseph Watson doesn't believe this, but Alex Jones thinks Sandy Hook didn't happen. They somehow generate more coverage than people who have more views and actually cover things in a fair way and an objective way, like you and I.
Yeah, the pinnacle of the argument that YouTube is dominated by the right is citing one example which does not believe that Sandy Hook happened, which just really sort of tells you a lot. Hey, by the way, I know we're wrapping up in a second. Twitter verification. I now have it, and I would get tons of people saying, David, Kyle Kulinski's verified on Twitter, and you're not verified on Twitter. So I finally got verified on Twitter. I don't understand what can I now do that I've been verified on Twitter?
Oh, nothing. It's just an insufferable badge of honor that people like me like to trot out to be smug. So I remember I literally tweeted at Jack, the guy who's the CEO of Twitter, for a month straight every day, where I compared the number of subscribers I had on YouTube versus whatever the population of whatever country it was, like Denmark. And I had more than the population of Denmark. I had 380,000 subs or something at the time, and Denmark is less, or one of those tiny Scandinavian countries. And I just tweeted at him every day and would be like, where's my verification? Because I actually got rejected once for it. And I was like, that's ridiculous. I'm ranked number 5 in the White House is right above me. It was during the election, number of views for political media or something like that. So I was mad about it, and I pestered him, and then eventually I got verified. So I think my audience, I did a segment on it.
Do you how strongly do you feel that it was those tweets that did it?
Not at all, really, because I think I told my audience to like bombard them, and that might have done it.
Yeah,
I did a segment where I was like, just tweet Jack and say, "What are you doing?" And then they did it, and then that may have worked. I don't know. So
I need to learn how to use my verification to be smug.
Oh,
because I don't know how to do that.
I was born with that. It's like the Lady Gaga song, "Born This Way." I was born smug. So, all right, David, great conversation, man. Thanks so much for doing this. I really wanted to get this off my chest. So we'll talk again soon, man. This was fun.
Let's do it.
All right, sounds good, man. See you.